Good morning, everybody. Today I want to talk about preferments. A preferment is when you add a small amount of your yeast source, whatever you're using, dry yeast, starter, whatever, to flour and water in a high hydration environment. Then you let it slowly ferment over a long period of time. In my case, my preferments go about 12 to 14 hours. Then you mix it into your dough during the mixing stage. As for the mix of the pre-ferment, think along the lines of 250 grams of flour to 250 grams of water and 1/16 of a teaspoon of yeast, just a pinch. So the question is, why do this? Why do a pre-ferment? Well, it's because the slow fermentation builds flavor and texture in your bread. In general, a pre-ferment creates acids, esters, and alcohol, and they give the bread a really strong and more complex flavor profile. It's also a tool. A lot of bakers use the pre-ferment to change the flavor profile of your bread by using different types of flour mixtures in there. So, what are examples of pre-ferments? Well, there's a Polish, which is 100% hydration. There's a Biga, which is a 60% hydration. There's a Levain, that runs about 100% hydration. There's pâté fermenté, if you'll excuse my French. This is where you take a part of the dough you mixed up that day, you split it off the main dough, and you store it. You're going to use it as a yeast source for your pre-ferment for your next bake. It's a sponge that runs generally over 100% hydration and has higher amounts of yeast in it. And a starter. Your starter is a pre-ferment when you think about it. You've added water, flour, and a yeast component, and you've let it ferment over a long period of time so it builds flavor. That's a pre-ferment by definition. The most flavorful sourdoughs I personally bake involve two pre-ferments, a starter and a Levain. This isn't my go-to sourdough recipe because the Levain adds an additional step to the fermentation and it takes longer. Sometimes I just don't have the time. But if you can use a Levain in your sourdough, use it because the bread tastes noticeably better when you do so. But just remember, you're going to ferment your starter, that's the first pre-ferment. Then you're going to ferment your Levain with your starter, that's the second pre-ferment. So you're going to have to add an extra amount of time to your bake to get it all accomplished. Well, if doing two pre-ferments ups the flavor profile of your bread, logic would dictate that 3, 4, maybe 5 pre-ferments before mixing your dough would up the flavor even more. So I experimented. I went up to 4 pre-ferments before mixing the dough. The result was a very weak dough structure and not a large flavor boost. I think after I go past 2 pre-ferments, the flavor really doesn't change that much. But like I explained, the dough was very, very weak. I think what happened in the pre-ferments is it built up too much acid in the dough, and the acid started chewing into the gluten strands and destroying the structure. So I would suggest you don't do this. In conclusion, I'd suggest you experiment with your pre-ferment mixtures, particularly what you put in them, the types of flours you use. Just repeat the same bake, exactly the same, but using different types of flours in your pre-ferment and seeing what the flavor profile is in the finished product. And that's what professional bakers do, and I just haven't played with it that much to see how to modify it and what I get. So try it. Let me know what you find out. If you get something really good, let me know about it, and I'll try it out. That's all I got for you today, so happy baking, everybody.